Hi everybody, welcome to the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey and I'm joined as always by Sam Proof. Today on the show, we're talking about things, what to do when things go wrong, because things will go wrong and things did go wrong last week and some of you will probably here to experience that. And I guess I just wanted to talk about that and maybe, lie on the couch and get some therapy from the collective audience out there. But that's coming up on today's show. But before we get there, we are going out live to a number of various places. So if you are watching live, throw in the chats, hashtag Team Live. And if you're watching later on, hashtag Team Replay. So it'd be great to hear from you in the comments if you are watching live. I know there are some people out there already. But Sam, I ask you this question every week, and I'm starting to think maybe it's the wrong question to be asking, but how are you going? How has your week been?
It's good. It's good. It's a busy week. This is our Super Bowl weekend coming up. So this Sunday is like the day. So I am like in massive crunch time since I am basically the one-man show, doing all of the promos, all the social media, getting the event ready, making sure all of the webhooks are working accurately because they're super important, and cutting videos to the last minute. I have like 90% of our videos cut, I think, but we have other stuff going on. So it's an intense week for me. And on top of all of that, yeah, I have no idea what else is happening in my life.
Yeah. I'm pretty much the same. Like, it's just everything is so busy all the time, and I think sometimes we need to take a step back and just evaluate what might be useful and what is just filling in time. But that's probably a whole other conversation. But I just want to check in with the chat. Hello to Saeed, the facilitator. Hello from Germany. And I know he was drinking some coffee a few hours ago to stay awake for this. And he's noting also that apparently I'm only 2 followers away from 200 subscribers over on YouTube. That's on I wasn't even aware of that. So thank you for that.
John's Learn Live Streaming YouTube channel. Do that. Go follow that.
That would be the one. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And looks like there's a friend of yours from LinkedIn, Benjamin, is saying hello as well. So
yeah.
And describing you as the truth. So I mean that's high praise indeed.
It's been from IFTTT. So I was just on their podcast not too long ago. Oh, and that reminds me, actually, just a few days ago, I was on the podcast Who Would Win Show with Race to Canis, which was a geek culture debate show in which they pit two superhero types against each other, and I was on as the judge. So that was super fun. Go look for that.
Awesome. So check that out after the show. But today on the show, we are talking about when things go wrong, and things will always go wrong in life, and especially if you're doing something live. Like, my advice in some ways is if you're a control freak, do it offline, record it, make all the mistakes, do the edits, and then, produce it in that way. But we do like to do things live, and I was sort of reflecting on this during the week. Part of the reason I like to do things live is simply that we have this audience interaction, which is so wonderful. And I always feel like your live audience are contributors to your content in real time. And in some ways, the thing I encourage people to not do is to not ignore their audience if they're going live.
Oh, for sure.
If that's the case, you can just record and upload as a standalone piece of content. But Sam, certainly things have gone wrong on this show and in other streaming things that you and I have done, specifically last week. And we're going to talk about this quite a bit, so I won't even tell you too much about it now. But we did have an audio issue last week, which was very character building, and it's kind of the reason I wanted to talk about this. But I guess, first of all, it's probably just important to acknowledge that things will go wrong, and it's not the end of the world.
And as I always say, not only will things always go wrong when you're talking about live streaming, it's always going to be something new and different. Like, you can't count on the same thing to go wrong. Anyone who's live streaming
it's one of those things
knows that.
Yeah, it's one of those things. If you learn from it, you can sort of build around it, and then something else will happen. Hello to Walter Strong from Walter Strong III from the Huddle, who's saying good evening, because it is evening where he is. But yeah, Sam, let's talk about it. And I guess when it comes to streaming, online streaming, video streaming, live streaming, whatever words you want to use to describe it, there are a few things that we definitely need, and there are some optional things. And I guess in some ways, this can be as simple or as elaborate as you want it to be, but the more moving parts, potentially, the more capacity
Oh
for
yeah,
things to go wrong. But
for sure.
obviously, we need to think first and foremost about our internet connection. And that's
Definitely.
not always something we have a lot of control over. But what are some of the things that you would recommend to somebody who's going live in terms of considering their connection to the internet?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely see what's available to you in your area and what you can afford. Um, at the very low end, you need to have at least 7 megabytes per second going up. Don't pay attention. Down's not as important when you're talking about live streaming. That's just you pulling stuff. That's if you want to watch Netflix, and that's very important for you. But if you want to live stream, you need to look at your upload speed. And the sweet spot for sort of low end HD is going to be 7 to 10. If you start getting into 4K streaming, you're doubling that at least. So that's what you want to look for. If you run a speed test, which you can do, just Google speed test or go to speedtest.net. Either of those work. Google has one built in. Speedtest.net is a different thing. You can run a speed test. And if you're pulling in under that and you are dead set on still live streaming, see if your phone can do it and what its connection is, because your cellular speed may be different than your internet speed. And B, you're going to have to pull your resolution way down. So pull your resolution down and your bit rate down. But when we talk about the 7 to 10 range, you're looking at either doing 720 by 1280 or 1080 by 1920. And then your bit rate is going to be somewhere in the 3,000 to 6,000 range. And that's a good starting point. If everything goes great when you've done it at that point, don't mess with it. Like, you could potentially try to do more. If you start with a 720 at a 3,000 and it looks good and it's going and there's no stopping, no hurdling, no buffering or anything like that, next time you stream, you can pump it up a little bit more and see how it handles that. But yeah.
And I guess a lot of that will depend on the particular software you're using to go live with as well, because some of the more basic tools won't even give you the option. They'll just decide what
if
you
you're doing
stream at. But
right.
But yeah, I guess the other thing too is I really, to the extent that you're able to, I really encourage you to try and be physically connected to your internet connection at home. So whether that is running Cat5 or Cat6 cables, and yes, I said the word cat. So Saeed is going to be very amused by that. But anyway, whether you're running those through your house or alternatively, the thing that I've had a lot of success with are these power line adapters. And essentially, if your electrical circuits are on the same connection, and this may not apply to older houses, but certainly most newer houses, it's not a problem. They'll actually use your electricity connections throughout the house to send that signal from one place to the other, and that's worked really, really well for me. I really, really recommend it. What I kind of don't recommend is relying too heavily on Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And probably not hotspotting to your phone unless you happen to be in a really built up city where there's a lot of infrastructure and technology.
I will say there is a service called Speedify. I think there still exist. And I believe the way it works is that it creates a backup. So you're streaming through your Ethernet, which is the best way to do it. But if for some reason things go down on the internet side, Speedify will create a backup stream through your phone using a hotspot and cellular data. So there is that. That might be a little too much for most people. Plus, it's a subscription fee or whatever. So, but it's something along those lines does exist.
Yes, yeah, that's certainly there. And I feel like, we always run this risk every week of getting very, very technical very, very early in the show.
Sure.
So hopefully we haven't scared off the newbies too much. But hello to CG, who's joining us in the chat. And Ender Trading is there as well. Thanks for your company. Saeed is saying, don't make the same mistake twice. There are so many new and exciting mistakes to make consequently. Having a hotspot set up next to your phone to use with your PC just in case stuff happens. So that is a good thing. And like I don't know if I think I mentioned this on last week's show if you caught it and if you could hear me at the time, which is we'll get into later. But we literally lost power for like 4 hours, and I know Sam, you've had some issues with that recently, but I literally, and I wish I had I'm sure I do have a photo, but I don't know if I've uploaded it to StreamYard to show you, but I literally, I was at work working from home, and I had meetings to attend, and I couldn't get into them.
Mhm.
And I sort of had this Wi-Fi dongle thing, and I had my phone, and I had my little light on my mini mount. It was kind of hilarious. But yes, there are ways of doing things, and I guess, to be honest, and I guess we'll get to this later on in the show, but sometimes your live stream might not be the most important thing in the world. There are times where you'll just have to say, look, there are too many things going on. I've just got to skip it, and maybe you let your audience know if you can, and if you can't, that's fine too. Like,
Yeah,
no one's really expecting perfection of anybody, and especially in this live situation where there are so many things that can potentially go wrong. I think most audiences are a little bit more forgiving. But let's
definitely.
talk, ever so briefly about some of the, I guess, the equipment issues that you can have. And one of those that we've certainly experienced on this show is every now and then, if I'm demonstrating something in OBS, I'll want a second camera to demonstrate things with. And I usually reach for my Logitech C920. And the thing about that is it has a microphone built into it. It's not a microphone I would recommend anybody ever
No.
use, but it is a microphone that Microsoft Windows will go, oh, there's a new audio device. Let's switch everything to that. So one of our most popular streams ever has the worst audio, like from on my side at least. Because I'm not speaking into the $600 microphone through the $800 audio mixer. I'm actually talking to this webcam that's like a half a meter away from me. So those things can happen. And yeah, I guess, Sam, like, you've been doing this for a really long time. I'm sure you have some great examples that you can share with us in terms of gear fails.
Oh, sure. I mean, beyond just being on the wrong mic or, having what John had happen to him the other week, which is Windows just changing the audio levels on him. You could be on mute for a very long time, which is why you definitely want to make sure that you're paying attention to your chat, because they will hopefully be telling you that you are on mute as early as possible. So speaking of updating Windows, one of the things you want to definitely avoid is updating software right before you're going streaming. I personally, if I know I'm doing a stream, won't even update it like 2 days before, because I'm like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it now, right? Like, the one exception to that is if you are slightly more complex and doing like chatbots and stuff that use like a Twitch API, there is a point where those chatbots may actually lose that API connection, and you actually do have to upgrade them or update them to reestablish the way those work. So that's always exciting. Yeah, and just always practice and test things before you're going live, of course.
Absolutely.
Trying to think of other things.
And, we've kind of alluded to the fact that last week, and we'll talk about this in more depth, but obviously some of you were actually here to experience that firsthand, and for that I apologize. But I think it is worth just mentioning because, and someone kindly in the audience pointed this out to me because I had really no idea, but Business Growth Ready was like, sometimes
Yes.
Windows updates can change these mic levels to 100%. And that is exactly what actually happened. And the really interesting thing about this is if you go to your system settings and go to the sound section, there is a volume for your input devices, if I can spit that out. And the thing is, this seems to move around quite a lot. Windows seems to be doing that independently. It's going to be a bit of a problem. So it's kind of my mission in life to just let people know that that is there and just be aware of it, because, and I'm going to play you an entire episode, and I say an entire episode, it's all of 5 minutes, so just bear with me, about this exact issue, because frankly, I needed the therapy, and podcasting is my therapy some weeks, so we'll get into that in a second. But I just want you to be aware that there are potentially a lot of moving parts to any streaming setup, even the one that you think is quite straightforward, because the thing is, I wasn't getting any error messages in any of the places to indicate there was a problem. Sam could hear the problem. The audience could hear the problem.
Yeah, it was.
When I eventually went to YouTube, it was quite apparent. So let's actually just check this. We'll just listen to this together, and we'll come back and talk about it some more. Some of the things that you might be able to do to prevent some issues in the future. This one's going to be a bit of a car crash, so please fasten your seatbelt securely. Hi, I'm John Lacey, and this is Build a Presentation Muscle, the podcast about showcasing your expertise through content creation. My co-host seemed a little cagey at first. He said something about my audio being a bit different. I fooled around with my settings in both the streaming software and on my physical audio mixer, but I couldn't see anything that made me think there was a problem. I figured we could just continue on and see what happened. But there was a problem, and it was a problem I couldn't hear on my end, but everybody else could. One participant noted I sounded like Darth Vader. I opened YouTube in the background and could instantly experience what everybody else was hearing. We might be having some audio issues, and I've tried everything under the sun to try to resolve those, but I actually can't hear what you're hearing, so it's very, very strange. My audio was completely distorted and fried, and yet, at first glance, nothing seemed wrong on my end. I was overwhelmed, I was disappointed, I was embarrassed. I really had no idea what to do. I'd been looking forward to our show all week long, and it was a disaster from the moment it started. I'm sure I snapped at some people who were offering useful feedback. I restarted my computer. It was still a problem. An audience member suggested I check my Windows audio input settings. Apparently Windows 11 has a habit of resetting these at a whim for no apparent reason. Sure enough, this was the culprit. And perhaps this is a useful thing to note for future reference. Always check your Windows audio settings. But that's not the reason I want to talk to you about this today. Today, I want to talk to you about the hardest part of content creation. I think outsiders and beginners might assume the hardest part of content creation is the content creation itself. But the truth is, with the right tools, training, advice, and practice, you can relatively easily create the things you want to share, whether they're videos, live streams, podcasts, articles, or graphics. I want to play for you another moment from that live stream, though I'll use the cleaned up audio this time. I'm not sure how obvious it was to other people, but it was the exact moment my heart was broken and I was ready to admit defeat. I'm sorry, everybody. I don't think this is going to work today, and I haven't missed a show in years at this point, and I'm just so frustrated. So I'm really sorry, but I don't know if this is going to continue. I don't know if Sam wants to do it by himself. But I'm sure it's excruciating for anybody. Yeah, in fact, I just literally heard it on YouTube and it's atrocious. I don't understand what has actually changed, because it's like nothing has changed recently. So it is really, really unfortunate. So the truth is, the hard part of content creation is riding the roller coaster of emotions and not giving up and not giving in. Things will go wrong. You will pour your heart and soul into something, and it will be received by the sound of crickets chirping. You'll wake up on a Saturday morning and feel tired and wonder if there's any point to any of this. You'll note that quote-unquote normal people enjoy a long breakfast and go to the beach on the weekends. They don't spend every moment creating something in the hope that somebody, indeed anybody, will notice. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the idea, popularized on TikTok, of the Roman Empire. There's this idea that men, particularly, are randomly fascinated by the Roman Empire and will think of it randomly and often. It's become emblematic of anything a given individual might be low-key obsessed with. As a content creator, my Roman Empire is often the podcasts I've been invited on, but which have never seen the light of day, or the show appearances that keep getting scheduled and then postponed or cancelled. The truth is, I'm not a particularly confrontational person. I probably will never mention these things to your face, but I can guarantee you that I will think about these things 3 times a week until the day I die, or something actually changes. So why am I telling you all of this? Often I want to put a nice neat bow on things and share them when I figure them out. But this particular struggle is one I'm always inside of. I don't have an answer yet, but I kind of want to acknowledge that this experience is common and completely relatable. I guess the thing I would encourage you to do is to not suffer in silence. Reach out to someone and talk it out. But know that non-creators won't really understand what you're going through. So choosing who you talk to about this is also important. For what it's worth, I think you're doing great. I want you to keep going. I want to keep going too. I think this is worthwhile work, and I'm proud of you and your commitment. For more information about today's show, head over to johnlacey.com.
I think we should start every show with a scream affirmation.
It's funny because I'm not really a particularly inspirational quote kind of guy, but I often find that I end up recording things that I wish somebody had said to me. And that obviously is a clip from my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, which you can learn more about over at johnlacey.com. But in some ways, I was going to talk about something completely different. But that happened, and I was deep into that one, and I just needed to talk about it. And it's been really encouraging to hear from people that have experienced similar things and just know that this is a thing. And it's one of those things for beginners. I never know how much to tell them up front because I kind of want to set some expectations, but I also kind of feel if most people knew how hard anything they wanted to do actually was, that they'd probably never get started. So you kind of want to almost embrace some of that youthful naivety. But anyway, in some ways, I just wanted to play that. And again, we don't normally play the entire episode, but I just thought that was really meaningful in the context of today's show. But this is the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey, and I'm joined by Sam Proof, as always. And today we're talking about when things actually do go wrong. What can you actually do about them? And what can you do for yourself as a content creator to make sure that you're looking after yourself and that you don't get too discouraged and you don't give up? I just want to check in with the chat a little bit before we get going. So Walter writes, as live streamers, we all go through those times which are called live stream nightmares on Live Street. Ender is actually asking about the Elgato face cam. I don't really know off the top of my head if there is a 4K version. The thing I would note about Elgato, given what I just said about Logitech, is that they've made a conscious decision to never build microphones into their cameras. And I kind of love that because the sheer number of times it is accidentally defaulted to one of those devices has just been so problematic. And I probably will grab one at some point in the near future. And I think the quality is pretty good. Again, you do need to consider the lighting and whether it sounds like you're doing things on the road and you do travel a lot. So you might need to think about natural lighting and artificial lighting, but it's probably a decent place to start. I don't know that it is 4K. I don't, although Saeed's doing some research in the background and assures us that the Facecam Pro is 4K. So that might be something worth looking at if that is in your budget.
I would also consider, because you are traveling and you want to minimize the amount of gear you're taking with you, see if just using your phone as your camera is good enough. Like, I don't know what phone you have and if that has a high enough resolution for you, but it's something you're definitely going to have with you already. So, save that luggage space.
Yeah, and there is actually sort of a travel camera, and I don't really remember off the top of my head what it's called, and I keep telling myself I don't need it, but it's so pretty, and it sort of has a gimbal built into it. I'll see if I can find that in the background while we're talking.
I can picture what you're talking about, but I don't remember what it's called.
Yes, it is. It's a very cool little thing, but anyway, let's not get too distracted on that. So I guess the second segment of today's show, we want to talk about the learning, because and we've spoken about this before, but sometimes there is a bit of a trap that you don't get started early enough and you spend all your time reading and studying and just not feeling ready. And in some ways, we encourage you to just get started because you'll get feedback by doing.
Yeah.
But that said, it often is a really good idea to do a little bit of research and get to know your particular technology stack and what that looks like. Um, so I guess in terms of your, because all the gear has sort of pros and cons and different quirks and different ways of working, and
Yeah.
it's really important that you get to know these things. And I kind of let's just talk about some of the mistakes I've made, and then we might hear from some of Sam's as well. And I do have
Sure.
a video to play for you in a second as well. But first of all, the camera that I generally use is the Sony ZV-E10, and it's a great little workhorse. It does some amazing things, but there were a few teething problems with it. Um, it has a very particular way, like you can use it as a USB web camera, but you've got to unplug a cable, you've got to turn it on, you've got to change a setting, you've got to plug the cable back in, and then it will work. And for me, once I sort of mounted it in my teleprompter unit, that was too hard. Fortunately, I found a bit of a workaround with just going out of HDMI and into the Elgato face cam, not face cam, cam link. Everything's
Mhm.
got cam in it, and I just can't tell anything apart anymore.
The
But
cam
so
cam.
just forgive me for that one. The cam, yes. So that was one thing, but another thing is like it has a once I started going in via that method, it actually has a power saving feature. So it'll just turn itself off after a particular period of time. And that did impact some of our early shows. We have this great little outtake trying to record a promo after one of our shows, and Sam sort of trips over his line, and then I go to say my line, and my camera just gives up entirely. So
Yeah.
those are a couple of things that you might want to get to know about your individual gear. Read the manuals, check out the YouTube videos and the reviews, and just talk to other people that are using them as well. Another thing, especially about microphones, is there is a right and wrong way of positioning yourself in relation to a microphone. Microphones have these polar patterns, and it's one of those things. When I first got my Rodecaster Pro, it was a huge investment at the time. Like, it was a lot of money. And I come from relatively humble beginnings, and my inner poor person gets very, very nervous when I spend that kind of money. And it came at the end,
Mhm.
and it was delivered at the end of the day. I was already kind of out of energy, and I put it together, and I used it, and it just sounded horrendously awful. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? And I just got so frustrated. I took everything apart. I put it back in the box. I put it in the corner of the room, and I went back to what I was already using. And at some points, I came back to it. But the thing, and I can laugh about this now, but it was so sort of mortifying to realize what had happened. And it was simply that the microphone I was using at the time, which was a Rode NT1A, it has a particular way of, like, it's literally over there. I wish I could grab it and show you, but like, I literally had it pointed the wrong way. So instead of grabbing my audio from here, it was bouncing off the wall and getting the reverb of the place, and that was completely on me. But I was just so frustrated, and I think in some ways, a lot of us as content creators, we are kind of a little island all by ourselves, and anything you can do to reach out and talk to other people and get that feedback is really worthwhile. Sam, do you have any sort of examples of things that you've learnt along the way?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of the things I've learned is kind of an order of operations issue. So I have some pretty complex setups, and as we said earlier, the more you add to your setup, the more potential things are going to go wrong, and they're going to. And so some of those things are based on when you turn certain things on or when you launch certain softwares. In the case of this setup, I have my microphone running through a Zoom H6. Um, and if I don't turn that on before I open OBS, there's issues. It reacts poorly to that. Similarly, on the Kitten Cam and this computer as well, we use a chatbot called Mix It Up app, and much like the Zoom, if I open OBS first, uh, there's a 50% chance that my alert overlays are not going to work. So I have to make sure to Mix It Up first, then open the streaming software, and everything should go good at that point. Some of the other things I think are just, oh yeah, the thing I was thinking about while John was talking was, um, with video drivers specifically, depending on the software, if it's already being used by another software, if I have OBS open and my cameras are automatically connected to that, and I then decide to go into something like StreamYard, or if I've had a Zoom, let's say, that's more typical to people, and then I go into like StreamYard and I want to get my stream going, my camera's already being used by something else, so it's not going to show up, and you're going to be like, "What the hell's going on?" you know, stuff like that. So, knowing if it's being used by other softwares is a big troubleshooting move to like close that out.
That is, like, I can't overstate how true both those things are. So there's always that danger that some random app, and maybe it's just running in the background, like you physically
Right.
don't know it's open, has got access to your camera and it's overriding everything else. But also the order of operations. And I've had times where I've been invited onto a show as a guest, and like Ecamm Live, like I unfortunately I was cluey enough to do a number of test runs before the show, but there was and I can't remember the exact order of these things, but there was a very particular order in which I needed to turn on the camera, I needed to nominate the webcam in the software in the browser, and then I think I turned OBS on to use the virtual camera. Like the order, like it's kind of mind-boggling how important that stuff actually is. And again, we don't really want to overwhelm the newbies too much, but um, I guess the other thing too, and it was such a bizarre little issue, and fortunately I have Sam to bounce ideas off, but I've just bought a brand new shiny computer this year, and when I first came into StreamYard, like I just couldn't get my audio or my video to work at all. And I'm like, I've done this, hundreds of times at this point. It's always been fine. And the weirdest thing was that my audio, and again, it's a Windows setting, so, Microsoft, they were always out to ruin my day lately. But it defaulted to a different version of my audio that for some reason broke not just the audio itself, but also the camera. And once I found that setting and sort of figured it out, everything was fine after that. But it is genuinely a little bit mind-boggling, and like you do need to honestly take a deep breath and just roll with the punches a little bit. I just want to check with the comments. So the facilitator says, I really don't mind if anything goes wrong, goes not as planned in a live stream, training, or workshop, especially when offered by someone who has the courage to host it for free. I guess that is always a standard disclaimer. We're happy to give you your money back, but, we haven't charged you anything, so keep that in mind. And Said also said, like having the camera pointing to the ceiling and complaining about the quality of it. Yes. I mean, I guess that's, in some ways, that's the broader point. Like, you need to, it's not enough to own the cool gear, you've got to learn how to use it well. So
Yeah, I mean,
I
the
just
number
want
of
to, and this
times that
is,
I've had to pull a camera out of a litter box for the kitten cam, I mean, that's a thing.
That's a thing. It's a fairly niche thing for you, I imagine.
It
But
is. I don't think most people
anyway,
have to worry about that.
speaking of some live streaming fails, I'm just gonna, and this is relatively lighthearted, and let's just check this one out. I was very green to live streaming when I started, and I was nervous, and I was talking really, really quickly, and I'd probably get through my content really, really quickly. And the thing that I didn't really understand at the time was that I would say the last thing I wanted to share with you, and I would hit the stop streaming button immediately. And what actually happens when I did that, especially with my older internet that was a bit slower at the time, was it would cut me off mid-sentence. So I do kind of encourage you to have sort of opening and closing sequences, whether that's a video, whether that's a static image. It's also good to have, 15, 20 seconds or something at the end of your live stream for the YouTube end cards as well. Yep. If you want to, send somebody off to another piece of your content. I spent a solid week preparing for a live stream, and I had slides and I had software demonstrations and I had all my scenes set up in OBS. Everything was ready to go. I was so well rehearsed. I did the whole stream. Nobody was there, as far as I know, no one joined me live. I got to the ends. I sort of looked at the recording on YouTube and discovered that my audio had been muted the entire time. And like, I was just ready to throw myself in front of a bus at that point in time. It was just so depressing. And to be honest, with my temperament, that could have just ruined my entire month. But I don't know what it was. But in that moment, I sort of went like, you're being stupid. Like, just schedule it for half an hour from now. We'll do the whole thing again. It'll be fine. And it actually was better. And I actually had people join me for the second time. So again, live happens and, things will go wrong. And it's not really a question of whether they'll go wrong. They definitely will. It's kind of like, how are you going to react to them when they do? But the thing about being in front of a green screen is that you have to kind of be mindful of the outfits that you're wearing and the clothes that you're wearing, because if it's a little bit too much like the green screen, that's going to be a problem. And I sort of learned this the hard way a week or so ago. I had this bright fluoro yellow t-shirt on, and I wore it, and I didn't think twice about it, and I just looked like this. Like I was just a floating head. So unless you're actually, doing it for comedic purposes, or I don't know, Halloween's coming up, headless horseman might be ideal. But yeah, especially if you are working with a blue screen or a green screen, just be mindful of that wardrobe and maybe, create a list of things not to wear on camera.
Was there supposed to be something in that?
I must admit, yes, yeah, I just sort of uploaded the end screen version by mistake, but that's okay. So I guess in some ways, like, things are going wrong, and in all of life and live streaming, and I think it's just really useful to have a sense of humor about it. So,
for sure.
If you guys have had funny moments or slightly traumatizing moments, and you're comfortable enough talking about them, let us know in the chat what you refer to. I just want to, before we jump into the next segment, Walter is sort of asking, and, if you are sort of switching your setup a little bit between different software or different scenarios and different shows potentially, and maybe the different technology stacks, like, is there a risk that, you change a setting and you don't change it back? And I guess I'll get Sam to speak to this in a second, but for me, yes, definitely. And one of the things that, even just between me going live and me recording my audio podcast, there are certain settings on my audio interface that I will actually turn off. Well, actually, it's more for recording standalone videos, but I sort of turn compressors and things off so I can work with the audio separately in the software later on as part of the editing process. So, I mean, there is potentially a danger there. A lot of the systems, if you've just got a webcam, if you've just got a basic USB microphone, hopefully there shouldn't be too much variation there, but I guess it's always a risk.
Yeah, I mean, you should always just give yourself time to, like, test things out. Like, every time we do this show, we get here about half an hour before the show to make sure everything's working right, so we don't have to rush. Because when you're rushing, when it's like, oh God, I have to be on air in like 3 minutes, that's when the mistakes are definitely going to happen. Like, it's not just randomly it's going to happen. No, that's the time is the rushing. It's going to happen other times too, but for sure, when you're like 2 minutes in and you're like, I didn't go through my checklist, something's going wrong. I wanted to say that the video we played was really good, because that's the big difference between having a physical sort of set and a green screen. Is the green screen, well, it might have a lot more control on what it looks like, and what you can do with it. Unless you have a dedicated studio space and dedicated studio lights, and you're wearing the same exact clothes or palette of clothes every single time, you're going to have to, like, adjust it every single time or every other time, which we've seen John's had a few times where we come in and he's like, well, what is that now? I'm like, yep.
That literally happened earlier today. And to be honest, like, I know it's never perfect. Although the thing I will say is that, and I probably shouldn't foreshadow this too much because we're talking about it in the next segment, but different ways of recording and having backups will give you more ability to change things later on. So let's just really quickly go to a promo. We'll get into some of the contingency planning that we can do just in case something goes wrong.
If you've been watching us for a while, or this is your first time and you're thinking, Sam, John, this is great stuff, but I'm wearing a lot of hats already and I don't need to add this to my list of things that I'm doing, but I really want to live stream, I've got you covered. I've been a freelance technical director and stream operator for 20 years, and I can help you either with one-on-one counseling, setups of shows, or even run your whole show for you. Get in touch with me, samproof@gmail.com, or find out more at samproof.tv.
And Sam can definitely help you if you need some live production services. So get in touch with him via the website or the email. But let's talk about some of the planning, the contingency planning, the plan B to maybe salvage things when mistakes happen. And again, I'm trying not to dwell on it too much, but last week is a great example where, you know, the audio was just shot for the first half of the show. Yeah. And the thing that I've come to do, and I think is useful, and I'm kind of encouraging people to do this more themselves, because even as recently as yesterday, I've heard from people that have done a 2-hour walkthrough of some software, and the camera just didn't record properly. So if you can think about the potential places where your setup could fail and sort of build in a few contingencies, that's really useful. I actually have, for this show, and again, I don't want to scare the newbies, but I just want to unpack some of the things that we do. And certainly on my end, to the extent I'm able to, and some weeks I can't for various reasons, and I just have to, you know, it's 5 minutes to the show, and I'm like, okay, I don't have that backup recording, but we'll just see what happens. But like, I will literally have the SD card in my camera recording its own version, and that's without the green screen stuff applied. So if my green screen goes nuts and I want to re-edit it, well, I've got the original source material and I can wrangle that much more easily. But I've also got the multi-track audio being recorded to another SD card in the Rodecaster Pro as a multi-track recording. So, and that was the thing that kind of saved my bacon a little bit in last week's show. It probably is worth noting, though, that last week's show, because I was so thrown by that issue, I don't know how useful clean audio of me saying, oh my God, things aren't working and I'm freaking out is for the average person to listen to. But I mean, it's worthwhile having there as a background. And also I record 1, 2, or even 3 separate recordings in OBS Studio now that I've got my faster computer and it can handle that. And also we're also recording individual recordings within StreamYard itself. I know that's a lot. And the truth is, most weeks I don't need any of it. But I'm always comforted by the fact that if I do have an issue, I've got that to go back to. I've got that to go back to in high quality. The only downside, actually, in terms of the video recording in the SD card is that an hour's worth of footage, sort of high definition, 60 frames per second, is 20 gigabytes. Yeah. So it's huge. It's massive. And again, that's probably a whole other show for us to discuss, you know, when to keep things and when to let them go, because storage is cheaper than
I don't
ever,
know that I would have
really
input on that show, because I keep...
Yes. You just keep everything. And I have literally had my my network storage fail late last year. So there is that danger that you'll lose things. But again, like, what is the lifespan of that? You need to be philosophical about that. So those are a couple of things I do, Sam. Like, I know you have a lot of... your setup is quite intricate, especially for Cute Avalanche. But like, are there things that you do just in case?
Yeah, I mean, for this show, I definitely record both the horizontal and the vertical through OBS as its own source, so it's just me. Actually, the vertical is me plus like an overlay of what everyone sees on screen with the two of us, so it's more like me reacting to stuff above me, whereas the horizontal is just me. StreamYard also does an ISO of, as John said, each of us. So that's generally all I do for this show. I don't do any in-camera stuff because the size is just too much for me to back up. Otherwise, I'd have to be buying drives every other week. For Cute Avalanche, we actually don't record quite as much locally. What we do have is the ability for our audience to immediately clip something cute. So we have a replay buffer that runs. And if anything interesting happens on screen, they can use a command that's just ! clip it, and it will take the last 30 seconds of whatever happened and save that locally. So instead of having to, you know, sort through 24 hours of footage and being like, there was that one thing that happened somewhere around 8 o'clock. No, I'm not going to do that. So, you know, we have that ability. We also do, like, you know, these weekly chats. So um, I will have those record because they're only like half an hour to an hour or two. So those do record locally, and those also record an ISO of one specific camera. We have 7 different cameras. So during the course of that chat, it'll flip around to different cameras to see where the cats are and what's going on. But I will record the camera pointed at the humans as its own isolated source. And then if all else fails, we're already broadcasting to Twitch and YouTube, and we can archive the broadcast itself from that point.
And I guess the other thing too, like, and I can appreciate why Sam doesn't do as much local recording of the kittens, because it's not quite 24/7, but it's those are long streams, and
Yeah.
you know, we do this show for about an hour, and like honestly, if I'm in front of a camera and having to talk to people for longer than an hour, that's not going to work for me. So I think in terms of shows, but like he will literally have 10 hours worth of stream from a kitten cam installed
Yeah.
in the software. So
Well, that's the max limit that apparently StreamYard has. Like
yes.
those streams were longer, but StreamYard cuts the archive at 10.
So again, I guess you know, it depends on what you're doing and what that looks like. I guess the other thing I would encourage and you saw, you know, me talk about the fact that I was muted the entire time, and especially if you're doing a solo stream, like don't be afraid to do it again. Like just don't be afraid to just pick up and do it again. And whether that's later that day, whether that's the following day, whether that's a month from now, that's up to you. But in a lot of ways, the thing you're building, and again, it's, you know, it's that presentation muscle, it's the practice of showing up and communicating and expressing yourself, and that's really useful. And I know we all feel incredibly time poor, and I'm sure many of us are, but in some ways I don't think there's anything to be lost by practicing that. And I must admit, I haven't done it lately, but for a little while I was sort of going live on a couple of destinations one day and then a couple of destinations the other day, just to really practice honing my presentation skills and the kinds of things that I was presenting at that time. So like, you know, you there's all kinds of things you could potentially do. Whether you have time or energy to work with those or not is really, it depends on what's going on in your world. And I feel like Sam's dying to say something, so I'll stop talking.
No, I was going to say I kind of forgot because I haven't done a podcast for Cute Avalanche in a while. But when we do that, we use VDO for our guests to come in, and that actually does give you the ability to create or record both locally on their machine and on yours. So we did do that as well. So that's, you know, if you are someone who's bringing guests in and you're not using StreamYard, whatever you're using doesn't give you that ability. I know a lot of podcasters will be like, will you record this locally and then email it to me? This gets you past that. You just have to be like, just when you're done, don't close the computer.
And I guess like we're probably just moving beyond the fact that people understand what these terms mean. So
Yeah.
Local recordings are the recordings that are happening on your computer. So they're not really subject to the variations in your internet connection or speed. So
Right.
it could be that if you're doing something live, that maybe you get a little bit fuzzy, a little bit pixelated. Maybe you have, there's a bit of delay there. The local recording will just happen on your computer as long as it's got enough resources to keep going at a consistent pace. That will be a much more useful standalone piece of content to put into an editing situation.
Yeah.
There are software that will record you in the cloud in real time. And in some ways, you are very much reliant on the quality of your internet connection in that circumstance. But I guess the other thing too, tools like StreamYard that we use, it does, like, it records locally, but then at the end of the show, it will upload, or actually during the show, depending on the quality of your that, to the cloud. So it's a local recording that's been brought into a place where we can share it equally, relatively easily. So these are all considerations, and again, some of you may not even need to worry about this, but for others it may be quite a useful thing in terms of, especially if you're repurposing content, you know, if you're cutting it up for shorts and things later on, or you're actually got a podcast feed. So those are a few things to keep in mind. But yes, we might just throw to a promo, and we'll be back in just a second.
Are you ready for the cutest sporting event of the year, the 5th annual Super Bowl, brought to you by Cute Avalanches, just around the corner, and we're thrilled to have you joining us for the special event. This year taking the field will be Otis, Eric, Amy, Ruby, Ola, and Maeve, with Coach Jean, the mama cat, watching from the sidelines and running the milk bar. This family of 7 were saved from the East Valley Animal Shelter in Los Angeles, California, and have been under our care since the babies were a mere 5 days old. And they're here with us just in time for the Super Bowl. At Cute Avalanche, our mission is to help support our local feline friends in need, and we're so proud to say that we have fostered over 180 cats and kittens, including several TNR missions, to help control the feline population in our area. We've also helped foster 1 dog. We've got 2 baby squirrels into other people's foster care, and last year we fostered our first one-eyed cat, immediately followed by our first fully blind cat, Monet. And we couldn't do it without the support of our amazing viewers like you, the Kitten Crew. Our goal for this year is to foster upward of 3 dozen cats and kittens, which will take us over 200 cats that we have fostered in our lifetime, specifically kittens under 8 weeks old that the shelters don't have the staff to care for and are frequently the first to be euthanized. So sit back, grab some treats, and get ready to be entertained by some of the cutest and cuddliest felines around. The Super Bowl starts February 11th at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern, because we can't do this without you. Your support and views help raise awareness to the work we're doing. So please share the link to our event, post it on your social media, and invite your friends and family to join us. You can even create your own watch parties. The main event runs about 2 hours, but the stream will be up for the entire 24 hours, letting you cheer on your favorite team of kittens with on-screen scores activated by your donations, which go toward food, litter, supplements, nutrients, toys, and so much more. You won't want to miss it, and you can get in on the caction early, right meow, by pre-donating through superbowl.com to receive a special tailgate perk with donation tiers that range from $1 to $50. We can't wait to see you on Twitch, YouTube, or your favorite streaming platform for the Super Bowl.
Okay, that actually cut off a little bit quicker than I was expecting. But yes, that's coming up this weekend, isn't it, Sam?
Yep, this Sunday at 11 a.m. In Pacific Standard Time. So wherever you are, it's gonna be Monday for John.
It will, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't go wrong with it with cute kittens, and they look great. And I always love seeing that mention of Monet specifically. Very good work that you guys do. So, and a fun way of interacting with that as well and supporting them. So definitely check that out over at cuteavalanche.com or superbowl.com as well.
Yeah, everything's.com.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, awesome. Okay, so this is the video and live streaming show. Insomnia Doodles is joining us for the end of the show, but you can watch it later on. That's the joy of these things being recorded. Team Kate, so I'm assuming that's one of the kittens.
That is not.
It's not?
I think she meant to write Team Late and hit the K instead of the L, is my guess.
And Sade's writing also no experiments 5 minutes before starting. Yeah. Yes, that's a big one.
I straight out 2 days is my thing where I will not update software if I know I'm doing a chat or a stream in 2 days. I'm not going to touch anything.
And again, like even that depends on your software a little bit, because as much as we love OBS Studio, you've got to think that thing through and plan those scenes before you go live. And I did something on my birthday that I was really excited about, but I was literally building my scenes at the time I needed to go live, and then I went live and I shared videos and didn't have the audio settings set up. It was a disaster, but that's part of the joy of going live. But let's we are talking about when things go wrong and being okay with not being perfect, and none of us are perfect, so we don't need to worry about that particularly. But I guess it's important. We keep talking about live happening, but life also happens. So if something happens and your live stream isn't the most important thing, then that's fine. By all means, cancel it, postpone it. You know, if you can, let people know that that's happened. But really, you need to prioritize your own well-being. And I guess in some ways, and I think I've subjected you to some of my personal therapy in this week's show as to what happened last week, but you need to be okay with these things. And like, no, literally nobody is perfect, and it's okay to show up, and people don't expect you to be perfect. They do expect you to care and to put some thought and community into the things that you do. And again, of course, there's nobody is perfect from Saeed.
Excellent.
Because of course we need more cat puns on this show. But yes, I guess, Sam, do you have any thoughts in terms of, and you're clearly a veteran in this area, so like, are there things that you would encourage maybe beginners to keep in mind?
I mean, yeah, I you said it, great. Like, there's the old adage that the show must go on, but this isn't TV, this isn't Hollywood. You got to think of yourself first. So yeah, if you're sick, if you're not feeling well, if things are just going crazy, it's fine. Cancel it. At the same time, if you're on a stream and things are going wrong, your audience is there to support you. They're not there like most of the time. Some trolls are there to make fun of you, but most of the time, everyone wants you to do good. They're trying to cheer you on and hope that everything works out. So don't stress about it. That does nothing. It's hard when things are going wrong and you're live and you're like, I really need this stream because I'm doing X, Y, and Z thing with it later. But if you can, as I said, before, start early so you have that buffer time of like testing things. If you can test the day before just to check things out, great. If you can test a half an hour before the stream, even that's good too. Like, whatever it is, get that checklist of all the things that have ever gone wrong and have that accessible so that you can like go through it and be like, everything's good, I did this. And we've done a whole episode about checklists, so look for that and just practice and come back. Don't worry about it. Take the hit and be like, I can do it better next time.
And I think that's the thing, like, it can be really tempting to obsess over things going wrong. And, I spoke to Michelle J. Raymond on her podcast recently, and I guess I was talking about stats specifically, and I'm like, you can look at those numbers if you want. They might tell you some useful things. They might just be a distraction. But what I really don't want you to do is to be neurotically obsessed with them, because once you've done the thing, whether it went well or whether it went badly, you really need to put your head down and start working on the next thing. Like, that's just the nature of this work. So, whether you're celebrating, whether you're commiserating, maybe give yourself 15 minutes to feel bad about it, but then just make a conscious decision to move on. Because in a lot of ways, it's about it's about your communication skills, it's about a broader body of work. So even if it went so badly that you need to make it go away. Right. And I did that with my version of last week's show. Like, I unlisted it. It's worth noting that on LinkedIn, I can't physically remove it once it's happened. So
really?
That's going to be there forever, which is mildly annoying. But I thought, what the hell? I've spoken about it publicly. It's no big deal. If people really want to see the full car crash, they can. But in a lot of ways, like, the things that are stopping you from trying again probably are emotional. They're probably psychological. And I know it doesn't probably sound like particularly good advice, but in a lot of ways, you've just got to push that stuff to one side and just try again. Like, there is no substitute for just trying and getting feedback and going again.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Okay, awesome. So there's some great chat in the some great comments in the chat. And Insomnia Doodles is noting that I'm making cat puns, although I was only reading somebody else's cat pun. But yes, I mean, they're kind of unavoidable if you're in Sam's orbit. So that's certainly coming up. And Saeed does have an event coming up shortly. And if you want to throw that in the chat, I'll put it up on the screen, Saeed, because it'd be great. I have a weird feeling I won't be able to catch it just because of the time zone difference, but I'm very happy to promote that. Saeed does some great stuff in terms of doing entertaining facilitation. Keeping it fun, doing a lot of effects in OBS via Zoom and other tools as well. So I love that there's this cross-pollination in the chat, and I guess we don't talk about community as much as we should on the show, but it's really not about Sam and I. It's about all of us really getting together and making the things and sharing the things and reflecting on our experiences. So thank you so much for that. As we begin to wrap up, obviously, the Super Bowl's coming up in a day or two, depending on where you are, time zone wise, and all the rest. I guess 2 days everywhere. But as we wrap up, Sam, where can people find you and watch your content and do all that good stuff?
Yeah, head over to samproof.tv. You'll find all of my social links at the top left and can follow me on there or hit this QR code. And please join us Sunday for the Cute Avalanche Super Bowl. You can find out more about Cute Avalanche at cuteavalanche.com. And I just put a banner in for the Super Bowl. I'll hit that one because John won't see it. It's superbowl.com on February 11th. And that is also 11 a.m. I apparently only wrote the 111. And it's going to be on the Cute Avalanche channels for Twitch and YouTube and pretty much anywhere else. So please turn up for that, even if it's just to lend a like. Everything helps shine a light on rescuing cats in the Los Angeles area and all of the foster work we do. So we appreciate your support.
Nice. And if you want to catch up with me, you can head over to johnlacey.com. I must admit, as a web designer and developer, I have no excuse for how out of date my website is. It's just, I haven't got around to it, but I am releasing new episodes of Build a Presentation Muscle. And there are links and articles about OBS Studio and other things that you can check out over there. But if you do go to the bottom of the page, there are links to places I'm much more active in, like YouTube and LinkedIn. So come and hang out with us wherever you happen to be. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're watching this, because we do go out to various places. Thank you so much for your company today. It's been great fun. And again, we love to see all the chat in the comments. That's been really wonderful. So have a great week. Have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you again soon.